Okay, let's do a little bit more of a complex example using PowerQuery to open models. So I have Creo sitting here, and as we can see, there's really nothing in session currently. And I've got this Nitro-CELL document, and it currently just has this erase memory flag in it. So if I run this right now, it's just going to erase memory. However, I do have a file here called change request items.csv. And if we take a look at this, let's open this with just a notepad real quick. You can see it's got basket, spider, and front plate in it. So this would be a good example of just data coming in from another system that doesn't have like information in a proper format for Creo to kind of work with. So you could get really complicated with this, but I'm just going to give you a very simple example. So I'm going to use the data connection within Excel and say I'm going to grab data from this particular file, the CSV file. It could be a text file also. And by default, we're loading this into PowerQuery within Excel, and we're going to transform this data. So we're going to say transform the data because we want to modify it to kind of clean it up so that it's useful for what we want to do with Creo. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add in a new column here, and that column is just going to basically add an extension to the data that's here. Again, there's lots of ways to do this, but I'm doing this kind of the manual, more of a manual way. So I've added a PRT extension, assuming every component in here is a PRT. And now I want to get this into a common column. So I'm going to do a merge columns, and we're going to call this the final name on this is going to be item name. It's going to be the title of that column, and we can see here that pretty much this is what we need for Nitro-CELL to actually reference. So I'm going to give this a name of my table, and we're going to say close this, and we're going to keep the changes we made, and it's going to by default load it into Excel. You can see here's the Power Query connection and the final result here. So I'm going to move this over. So this is the table that we were generated. If we take a look at the design, you'll see it's titled My Table, and this is the contents that's coming from that external CSV file. So if we simply come in and say open using the table model reference, it needs the TBL. My table is the name of the table. And you can see here that it's going to be looking at item name by default. So if I come in and put that in there and we simply run this now, we should see when we open up the in session tab, yeah, those are the files we asked for, those three. Now here's the cool part. If you come in and you say, well, okay, I need to have, let's say that this data came in from an ERP system or something, and somebody came in and says, we also need to add in screen and let's see what else. Let's see what else is in a speaker. Oh, cover, a screen, grill, and then let's see, basket, spider, and magnet. Okay, so we're going to save this down. Now, with Power Query, before you really kind of open things and do stuff, anytime you're kind of working with Power Query or you're having table related stuff in Power Query, you want to kind of do a refresh. And this refresh is an Excel worksheet thing. It's basically going to force this data to update before we move on to the next step. So when I do this, you'll notice that it's updating the table data here, and it's completed that operation. And you'll notice that it has basically pulled this new content in, formatted it correctly. And then if we take a look in session, sure enough, we've got our models that we were asking for. So that's just a quick and dirty example of kind of how to use Power Query to kind of prep data for using the open command. You could get pretty crazy with this and do some really cool stuff, but that's just a nice example of how this would work.